Would you be okay with a Muslim prime minister of UK?
Yeah, absolutely. Do I think we have a particular problem in the UK with radicalized Muslims? I'm not convinced by that. You're just, picking on people because of their Muslim faith.
If you were okay with somebody who was a Muslim to become a prime minister, then they come in and they say, Sharia law, what are you going to do about it?
You can't tar the entire Muslim population with the brush of potential extremism in the same way that you get Christian extremists in America who've committed appalling atrocities.
You're comparing the two?
It's the same, isn't it?
It is.
Are we really suggesting that 1.4 billion Muslims are all potential extremists? Because I don't get that sense of the Muslims I know in London.
All right, guys, look at the screen. We are jumping straight into a massive clash today. Nobody woke up expecting Piers Morgan to be the voice of reason, but he just sat across from Patrick Bet-David and completely dismantled his anti-Muslim talking points in real time. PBD tries to run his usual fear-based charts, and Piers shuts him down with actual history and a brutal reality check about Western wars. You do not want to miss how awkward this gets. Hit that subscribe button right now, because I'll be giving you more interesting insights like the one you're about to watch. I'll be giving my full thoughts along and at the end of the clip. I'm James Whitmore, and you're watching the Whitmore Brief. Let's roll the tape.
Estimated Muslim population in UK by percentage from 83 till today. I'm sure you've seen this. 500,000 in 83, 1%. And then it cracked 1 million in 97, 14 years later, and then 2 million, and then 4 million, and then 4.5, some say 5 million today, 6-7% of the population. Do you think this growth, the way it's going right now, getting to 10, 20, 30%, do you think it is a good idea to keep allowing people to come in to combine the Islam way of thinking, what their ideas are, and coexist with the Western ideology?
Well, I think there are issues which are serious to be considered. For example, it's been reported there are as many as potentially 85 unofficial Sharia courts in the UK now, which are not operating under UK law. They're operating in their own law for their own communities. That clearly is not a good thing in a country like the UK. So we have a lot of Muslims who live in the UK. We've always been a very multicultural, very tolerant place. The vast majority of Muslims living in the UK have assimilated perfectly well and live perfectly peaceful and lives which contribute to society. And then you see the quite disturbing spectacle of protests, say, in London, during the Israel-Hamas war, where people are brazenly supporting Hamas in these protests. And, Hamas is a prescribed terror group in the United Kingdom. That should be not happening. The sweeping migration, much of it coming from countries that have been at war, whether it's Syria, Iraq, or wherever it may be. But you've had millions and millions and millions of people deposed from their homes or fleeing war-torn situations and sweeping across the continent of Europe and wanting a better life for their families, which I completely understand.
All right, let's just pause the tape right there. Did you catch what just happened? Patrick Bet-David pulls up a chart. He looks at SNAP benefits, food stamps, and says, look, 45% of immigrants from Afghanistan, 35% from Iraq are on government assistance. Why are we letting them in? He frames it as a cultural failing. He frames it as them draining the system. And Piers cuts straight through the noise with one phrase: duty of care. Afghanistan, Somalia, Iraq. These are not just random countries on a map. These are nations that have been absolutely devastated by decades of American and British military intervention. You cannot drop bombs on a country for 20 years, destroy their infrastructure on false pretenses, create a massive refugee crisis, and then pull out a spreadsheet to complain that the survivors need food stamps when they arrive. The numbers on PBD's chart do not expose a problem with the immigrants. They expose the consequences of the wars we waged. Let's keep watching, because Piers is about to completely corner him.
If you ask the Muslim Council of Britain, it'll say that 75% of Muslims in Britain have assimilated and see themselves as Brits.
Yeah.
I'm a Brit. I consider myself proud Brit as well, but 25% don't, depending on the numbers you look at. How would Winston Churchill today, would Winston Churchill be tolerant with the borders? Would he be like, yeah, it's okay, let him come in?
No.
Would he handle the threat? And think about how his wiring was. This is your world.
Yeah.
What do you think he would have done today?
No, I think he'd have been tough. I think he'd have been very...
In what way?
Well, I think he'd have been very protective of our borders in a way that was very protective against the threat of Nazism to our way of life.
What would Churchill have done? What do you think he would have done?
I think what would he have done?
Seriously, what do you think he would have done? Just think his profile.
I certainly think right now he would have put the clamps down on more people coming
would
in,
he have
except
sent,
in exceptional circumstances.
Would he have sent anybody back from the 7% that came here? How would he have treated some of the criminals? How would he have treated some of the some of the stuff that's going on?
So I would say he certainly wouldn't have just picked out the Muslim community. We have a lot of different religions, nationalities living in the UK. I don't think he would have singled out Muslims. I think what he would have taken a more pragmatic view and gone, we have too many people in this country now. There's too much pressure on our public services. Some people are going to have to leave. I don't know why they're not sort of tougher on the French. You've got to do a deal with the French on this. You've got to say, look, sorry, you're letting all these people get on these boats. Once they're at sea, there's hardly any way to stop them. And then once they wash up on our shore, they are legally allowed to remain as potential asylum seekers.
Would you be okay with a Muslim prime minister of UK?
Yeah.
You'd be okay. That wouldn't do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's your concern isn't that at all?
No, not at all. No, listen, I don't want to radicalize Muslim running the country. I don't want to radicalize anything running the country. There's a lot of radicalized elements of all religions, of all nationalities. Do I think we have a particular problem in the UK with radicalized Muslims? I'm not convinced by that. I think there are radicalized Muslims, and clearly the Muslim population is rising exponentially fast compared to other populations. So we are going to have to look at this and say, well, what do we do about this going forward in a way that you don't look like you're just picking on people because of their Muslim faith?
I respect the tolerance that you have of what could happen to Brit long term, because I think sometimes when you're in it and it's gradual, like the whole thing about you put a frog in a boiling water and you boil it slowly, and then boom, he's dead. It's too late, right? I think sometimes when people are in it, they're like, yeah, well, it's okay with this, it's okay with that, it's okay with this. I think UK is flirting with being tolerant, and it'd be interesting to see who would rise up and want to do something about it.
Well, look, I go to a lot of Muslim countries. I've been in Saudi Arabia. I've been in
To me,
Qatar.
the biggest thing is the extremists. It's not a...
No, exactly. Here's my point, though. But also, they have zero tolerance of people wanting to operate under their own laws when they go to those countries. For example, so the whole debate about Sharia law and so on, I can understand why a lot of Brits get exercised about that, because if I went to Saudi Arabia or Qatar or somewhere and decided I would ignore the country's laws and operate under my own laws while I was there, you wouldn't get away with it for very long.
So why would you be okay with that? Why would you be okay with that?
Well, I wouldn't.
No, but what I'm saying is, so if you were okay with somebody who's a Muslim to become a prime minister, and then say they're the noble one, right? And they're coming in, they actually love Britain, but it opens it up, and an extremist like, I want to get in, then they come in and they say, hey, Sharia law, what are you going to do about it? Then what? Because you're making it a step ahead.
Yeah, but I don't think you can't tar the entire Muslim population with the brush of potential extremism in the same way that you get Christian extremists in America who've committed appalling atrocities. I don't assume that every Christian, I'm a Christian, I don't assume every Christian in America is a potential extremist. I just think it's there's got to be a more...
You're comparing the two?
No, I'm just saying extremism is extremism. Isn't it? Isn't it?
Is.
Well, it's the same, isn't it?
It is. No, I think extremism is extremism. To me, that's not the part of it. But when you look at the percentage of who is, like, for example, in America, do you remember the story about the Japanese when they went to the World Cup? What were they doing afterwards at the end of the game? They were cleaning up the arena. Everybody's like, what are they doing here? That's what we do in Japan. So would I want 1,000 Japanese neighbors? Yes. They are their own people. They raise kids. They go and work. They don't hate America. They don't get up there and, commit terrorist crime. You don't hear stories like that from them. They just go and do their part, right?
But I would argue this back. Right? So I went to the Qatar World Cup, for example, for a week. Felt completely safe. There was no hooliganism whatsoever.
But that's not the same as the extremists. These are two different...
No, I agree. But again, I think there's extremists everywhere attached to all different groups. And I would say that I like the way the Middle East has been opening up in the last decade. I think it's exciting, it's dynamic. I just interviewed Cristiano Ronaldo in Riyadh at his home there. One thing he said, it just feels really safe. And it feels like it's opening up in a way that's good for families and everything else. And I think that's great. I don't like the tinge of you're all potential extremists until you prove otherwise.
No, because
I think it's unfair to a whole... how many Muslims are there in the world? 1.4 billion? Are we really suggesting that 1.4 billion Muslims are all potential extremists? Because I don't get that sense of the Muslims I know in London. I walk down my high street in London. There are Muslims running all sorts of different businesses.
Okay.
And honestly, they're not extremists.
If we look at immigrants that come to America, what percentage of them are on SNAP the most? Have you seen this chart?
No.
Food stamps by ethnicity. 45.6% of immigrants from Afghanistan are on SNAP. 42.4% from Somalia. 35% from Iraq. So why are we inviting more from Afghanistan, Somalia, Iraq?
I'd need to study this in more depth, but certainly the Afghanistan, Somalia, Iraq, these are people, I imagine, predominantly who have fled war-torn countries. So they, by definition, when they come to America, are going to be impoverished.
Yeah,
right?
but you know, when America was founded, it's about getting the best to come over here, right?
You fled your family
Iran.
from
I lived there for 11
from
years.
a war-torn
Yes,
place.
we did.
Right? So take Iraq, for example. When I was editor for the Daily Mirror in the UK, I opposed the Iraq war before, during, and after it. It cost me my job in the end.
Yeah.
After 10 years running the newspaper. But I think I was vindicated by what happened afterwards. That war was fought on a false pretext. Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. They never found them. So and also there was this kind of subliminal, we need to respond to 9/11. We can take out Saddam. I never saw that connection. It seemed to me completely wrong. So I look at Iraqis, right, who were displaced by a war, which many people, including me, would say was an illegal war in their country that caused utter devastation. And they come to somewhere like the United States, which has been the home for people like that ever since its inception, and is lauded around the world for that, for being a place that you can come to, right, from places like that. But is there not a particular duty of care? Maybe you don't think there is, but is there not a duty of care to people who come from a war-torn place like Iraq, where the United States, along with the UK and other countries, waged that war, in my view, completely wrongly, in a way that caused their displacement, caused them to lose their homes, maybe lose their loved ones, and they come here for a better life, but when they get here, they have nothing. Now, that may explain some of those numbers. I don't know. But certainly in that case, you've got to think, well, okay, if they're the ones who are getting the SNAP benefits, okay, what is the correlation between the ones who were displaced because of the actions of the United States and the UK and the other allies that fought the Iraq war on their presence here in the United States? And is there a duty of care towards them? I don't think we should lose in the mix of all this a compassion towards genuine asylum seekers, particularly from countries ravaged by wars which we may have been complicit in starting, in my opinion, on a false pretext.
Yeah, I think that I would sit there again. I would sit there and I would say, if we're looking at anybody that's coming in, if we caused some of this, let's see what we can do about it. Now, of course, somebody in America could say, well, you caused all of it, right? Okay, no problem. But if you're coming to America and you hate America, I have no tolerance for you. And by the way, the argument, some people in America are like, look, we don't want anybody else to come in here. This is plenty, right? There are people that I've had on the podcast that wouldn't even want me to be here right now. They're like, you know, you got lucky getting in here, which is their argument. They have the right to have that argument.
How wrong is that argument?
I will tell you, like, so if somebody's born in America and they're kind of like, look, man, yeah, maybe we got lucky with you, Pat, but we got a lot of ones that came through and we didn't get lucky with that. Hate America.
I would add the caveat of the Iraq caveat, which is if you go and bomb a country and you destroy people's lives, I do think a country like the United States, most prosperous country in the world, does have a duty of care to bring some of those people into its country, as it has done with the Iraqi community in the United States.
What if that's a royal screw-up on another administration that you never agreed with them? Because Trump doesn't agree with Bush. So maybe he's saying, I didn't do that. Bush did that.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this. Because this wasn't just a debate about immigration. This was a masterclass in what happens when fear-based talking points collide with actual lived experience. Throughout this entire clip, PBD is desperately fishing for validation. He uses the Winston Churchill hypothetical. He uses the what if a Muslim prime minister implements Sharia law trap. Let's just be honest about how absurd that last point is. The United Kingdom is one of the oldest functioning democracies on earth. A prime minister cannot just wave a wand and bypass Parliament, the House of Lords, the judiciary, and the king to install religious law. That is a fantasy. It is an intentional fantasy designed to treat 1.4 billion people as a monolithic threat to be feared, rather than human beings to be respected. But the most staggering part of this entire exchange, the ultimate hypocrisy, Patrick Bet-David is sitting there, arguing that America needs to close its doors to people fleeing war-torn countries. Patrick Bet-David came to America as a refugee from Iran. His family fled a country in turmoil. They came with nothing. They were given refuge, and he built an empire. And now, he is using the very platform he built in the country that saved him to argue that we should pull the ladder up behind him and deny that exact same opportunity to refugees from Iraq and Afghanistan. That is not a political stance. That is willful amnesia. Piers Morgan brought facts, constitutional reality, and basic compassion to this table. PBD brought nothing but fear. But I want to know what you guys think. Did Piers win this as decisively as I think he did? Does PBD's argument hold any weight for you? Let's get into it down in the comments. I'm going to be down there reading and replying. If you appreciate these breakdowns, hit that like button, and make sure you are subscribed to the Whitmore Brief. We are cutting through the noise every single week. I'm James Whitmore. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.